WMNF Tampa, and WMNF HD1. Building a better world, one important news story and great song at a time.
Hi, this is Miss Julie. Our next week-long membership drive begins at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, February 19th, and goes through 9 a.m. on Wednesday, February 26th. We're seeking volunteers to help take pledge calls, tally donations, and food donors to help feed those hungry and amazing volunteers. Restaurants, caterers, or chefs can find out more about donating drinks, snacks, or full meals by calling me at 813-238-8001 or email missjulie@wmnf.org. I can also help get you registered to volunteer. Just be in touch. Thanks.
You are tuned to WMNF Radio 88.5 FM. This is the public affairs program called Community Speaks. And I'm your host, Patrick Mobili. Of course, this is an opportunity always to talk to you about what is happening in your world today. And this is President's Day. And just like a lot of Mondays, I get to spend another holiday with you. And this is an opportunity to talk about the 1 month presidency of 47. It's been 1 month, and what we've seen is chaos with executive orders, which are not law, can be challenged and has been challenged in court, has caused a lot of chaos, and is continuing to cause chaos even among those who are perpetrating the fraud. That is this fraud of firing people. This is 2020. The Project 2025 is in full effect, as the idea was to not only shrink government to where it's no longer viable, but also to basically replace the bureaucracy, the workers who have worked across administrations. And but for some reason, the extremists in the MAGA party thinks that they want everybody who works in the bureaucracy to take a loyalty pledge to Trump. And that is exactly what may be happening. The idea of firing these people and allowing the courts to block it and even stop it, and forcing them to rehire some of those people, at which time they will have to take a loyalty pledge. That's where we are. That was the whole idea. This 47 and the apparatchiks around him want to recreate the federal government in their image. That is the conservative extremist, maybe even Christian nationalist image. And we have to be concerned about all of that. In the meantime, people are confused, people are suffering. And so we're going to talk about all that has been happening. Meanwhile, right here off the coast of Florida, the U.S. Coast Guard has repatriated 132 Haitians, migrants that were intercepted in an overcrowded vessel southeast of the Florida Keys. That was earlier this month, but according to the officials, the Coast Guard stopped this 30-foot vessel 50 miles southeast of Marathon, Florida during the first week in February. And I think the interception came after air crews from Customs and Border Protection, Air Marine Operations, along with Coast Guard Air Station Miami, spotted the boat attempting to enter U.S. waters that they called illegally. But these were people who are in trouble, humanity in trouble. And the idea is not to just throw people back to the wolves. And we know what is happening in Haiti, on that island, and the violence, the gang violence that has taken over, the struggles of the international community to try to go in and help using Kenyan forces. All of those things have been defunded so far in this new month-old administration here in the United States. So it's going to be a wonder to see how this administration continues to respond to events in the world. And we're seeing the first policy debacle take place dealing with the war between Russia and Ukraine, and how the administration is struggling to not show that it is a puppet of Putin, but it is exactly what it is showing us, because the talking points that we've heard from Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, and all the way up to 47. And I think that it is clear they're trying to use the talking points they're using shows that Russia is going to get the best part of the deal, keep the borders, as the Defense Secretary said, keep the borders where they are since 2014 when Russia invaded and took Crimea from Ukraine. And the Defense Secretary is saying it is unrealistic to expect the arrangement or the settlement to go back to the 2014 border. So that's a win for Putin and a loss for Ukraine. And right now, the administration is meeting with Putin in Saudi Arabia, of all places, behind Ukraine's back, not including Europe, saying that no longer this administration does not support Ukraine joining the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, so that there could be protection for that country. So we're going to continue to watch events unfold, but as it looks right now, this administration is doing everything it can to get the best deal for Putin. And Putin was the one who broke international law and invaded another country. An actual invasion of Ukraine, and the United States, this new administration no longer wants to no longer wants to support Ukraine, the victim in all of this. We're going to see this puppetry continue to happen. Meanwhile, the real power behind the throne in this country, behind the Oval Office, tech bro Elon Musk is still causing a lot of chaos. And we're going to talk about the list of federal agencies that have begun the mass layoffs. We're going to talk about the scattered protests against Elon Musk, and they're targeting all Tesla dealerships, these protests are. But this rise to power of this unelected tech bro coincides with the attack on South Africa, and the idea that there is a cabal of white supremacists in suits and ties that is an Afrikaner group from South Africa, the right-wing Afrikaner group, and they're in Trump's ear. And it's we could talk more about what they're talking about, and but it's no accident that this tech bro from South Africa is now spouting the ideas of this group of white minorities from South Africa who's in the ear of the president. And so it's no accident that this president, 47, offered political asylum to South Africa's white minority, claiming they are under oppression, when even after apartheid was over, the idea that there will be political empowerment of the black majority in South Africa did not translate to economic equality. The vast majority of the land in South Africa, over 70% of the land, is still owned, still held by the white minority Afrikaner group in South Africa, or Azania, as it is called in ancient times. But the idea is that, well, the fact is, they own 70% of the land, but only represent 10% of the population still. So economic empowerment still has not happened in South Africa. It's still one of the most economically divided countries in the world. And so we could talk more about why there's this need to consider them as oppressed. And we have to be cognizant of the news that you're getting as well, as it shows that even in the middle of all of this mass deportation, if you're looking for recent news on these mass deportations and looking through Google, don't trust your Google search. It's showing old photographs from past, especially those deportations that were carried out by the Biden and Obama administrations, claiming that these are new pictures from new deportations. Then I think the idea is to suggest that the current administration is doing the most, and these are the proof, but it doesn't want to show the actual damage and deportations that they're carrying out right now. So there's this need to revise history, and we're seeing a lot of this take place in the middle of this administration's rise to power. And we're going to continue to see that disinformation and misinformation. And we're seeing some of the people who are being named to these cabinet positions lean in on all of that. But there's so many contradictions that have unfolded in this month. And here on this President's Day, we could talk more about that. But we're going to talk about the takeaways from this whole first month, especially in Mideast policy, but also in the what is happening in the middle of Europe. We know that Europe has been the epicenter of 2 world wars, and Europe is being sidelined by this administration all of a sudden. We know that there's a tendency on this president's part to smash old alliances that have been working since World War II. And he's embracing the hardliners, the strong men in his mind of the world once again, and people who are carrying out some of the most anti-human policies. Meanwhile, China says the United States is backpedaling on Taiwan. And so we're seeing these expansionist policies may trigger other expansionist policies that we hadn't anticipated or should have anticipated, given the policies that we've had prior to this administration. So the United States is looking like a country that is just with a split personality, and one administration has one set of policies and alliances in the world, and this administration is going totally the opposite direction. Into whose detriment? So we're going to talk about all of that, but I see that you want to call, and as I said, we're going to talk about all of the protests and all of the federal agencies. But some of these agencies, some of this administration is already backpedaling on some of these, trying, as I said, to rehire some of these people after firing them. They've been trying to bring back fired nuclear weapons workers. So this is a reversal when the administration fired all of those nuclear weapons workers. And so now they're trying to halt those firings of hundreds of federal employees who were tasked with working in the nation's nuclear weapons program. But this about face has left workers confused, and the experts cautioning that the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE's blind cost cutting, will put communities at risk. And so those employees have, one of the most sensitive jobs across the nuclear weapons enterprise, and they are assembling warheads and all of that. But they were abruptly laid off. About 350 employees at the National Nuclear Security Administration were abruptly laid off late Thursday, and is one of the hardest hit offices, and was one of the Pantex plant near Amarillo, Texas. And those employees have, as I said, they are reassembling warheads. And some of them are hard to find. Some of them don't want to be contacted again, not being able to find all of them to rehire them. But these agencies issued a memo rescinding the firings for all but 28 of those hundreds of fired staff members. And so they are looking to bring them back because they see, I suppose, find that it was a dangerous thing to get rid of that particular set of workers at the nuclear agencies. The Energy Department, they were fired, dealt with energy efficiency and the effects of climate change. These issues are not seen as priorities by this administration. Many others dealt with nuclear issues. Even if they didn't directly work on weapons programs, they still dealt with nuclear issues. And this has included managing massive radioactive waste sites and ensuring the material there doesn't further contaminate the nearby communities. And that includes, a lot of communities, such as in South Carolina, which is where the Savannah River National Laboratory is in Jackson, South Carolina, and the Hanford Nuclear Site in Washington State, where workers secure 177 high-level waste tanks from the site's previous work producing plutonium, that are producing plutonium for the atomic bomb, and the Oak Ridge Reservation in Tennessee, a Superfund contamination site where much of the early work on the Manhattan Project was done. And so these are sensitive sites. But you can call me, 813-239-9663 is the number to call. This is Community Speaks, your chance to chime in on some of the issues of the day, the issues that I'm trying to highlight here. You can also write me, DJ, WMNF.org. Irene stands ready to take your telephone calls. Of course, next hour, we're going to get back to the music with It's the Music Monday after news update from The Scoop. But right now, you're tuned to Community Speaks here on your community radio station, 88.5. We're going to go straight away to the telephone lines, talk to our friend Daryl from Brandon. Thank you for calling, Daryl. You say what?
How you doing, Billy? I'm not going to be on long. I just want to make a statement.
Okay.
With the layoff that President 47, you call him, Trump, has made, well, now King Trump.
Well, I call him puppet number one. Mm-hmm.
What did you say?
Puppet number one.
I'm not going to go any name calling or anything. I just simply want to say that now he says that he's not beholden to any law. No, I don't recall any president saying that. I wanted to make a suggestion to you that somewhere in your show you should play the song by The Temptations, since I'm a child of the 60s, Ball of Confusion.
Oh, yeah.
That would appropriately apply. I just want to make a statement to the people who were calling to say that I thought this was supposed to be a talk show that would entertain all views. Well, I want you to call in. I want you to tell me, why should anybody feel safe flying in a biplane or flying in a jumbo jet now that people in the aviation community have been laid off? Oh, I know that's because of DEI. Or like what you just mentioned, the nuclear industry and other things. I'm not going to even talk about the myriad of symptoms that are going on where he's just throwing stuff against the wall and then drawing back if he feels opposition. But he's going to blow through it and do it anyway. But I just want to say this. Since I worked for a biomedical lab, what are you going to do if he makes cuts to Medicare? And, you know, Medicare is because of Medicare. You're able to go get that surgery in the hospital.
Right.
Because you don't have really deep pockets like Donald Trump and like a lot of oligarchs, people like what's his name, Mr. Musk, to get that surgery. Medicare helps pay with that, and you also have private insurance. You know, like Red Cross and Blue Shield, and the one that the CEO, he was assassinated. I can't think of it right now. How would you feel about
United
that?
Health.
Because you know it's coming. Or what about if you receive Social Security? Not everybody who lives in the villages or lives in Sarasota where you're flying a Trump flag, you know, you have a pension. You know, you receive Social Security. How about that? What if he cuts that? How are you going to make by? How are you going to get by?
Yeah, especially if Congress goes along with it and turns the executive order into law and cutting all
Congress, but I thought Congress controlled the power of the purse. No, he wants to control the spending, along with his friend, Mr. Musk from South Africa, who's not even a United States citizen. How are we going to get by like that? I just want to pose that question. Billy, I'm going to get off the air and just listen. You have a wonderful day, y'all. Go ahead and call in. I dare you to call in. I want you. I double dare you to call in and give me an explanation. Tell me this one that, he's just saying that. He don't really mean it. Really?
Right.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. I appreciate that call. Thank you, Darren. And what's going to happen when you find out that he really did mean it wasn't just a joke, and that everything he says sounds like a joke, but he really means it. He thinks that this is how the world should work. He doesn't really understand his own country's laws, but he doesn't care. He was never about following the law. He knows that his opposition cares about following the law, which was part of this success. So what is going to happen, especially with the cuts in healthcare and kind of looking at where a lot of his constituencies come from in these urban, in these rural areas where it is already difficult to get to health, to get to any kind of hospital and any kind of doctor within 10 miles of your home. Just like in the rural areas, it's very difficult to get to a food place, to a grocery store. Not just a big chain, but a small store. It's very difficult nowadays in the rural areas, given that so many people have been knocked out of being competitive in retail when you have big box stores that have taken control of economies. The rural areas are the ones who suffer the most, especially in a shrinking government that is not going to be viable enough, effective enough to be of any help in places where it's needed the most. What about when there's a hurricane and natural disasters, not just these aviation disasters that have been taking place? If you're cutting even staff from there, but how do you deal with natural disasters if you're shrinking government so much that is not even viable? But not only the shrinkage that is going on and the possibility that you got to rehire people demanding that they are loyal to not the Constitution, but to the president and the MAGA movement. This is the kind of reorganization that we're seeing taking place. But like I said, so many things are happening all at once and in real time. And it's not just about how we're going to live in the future, but how do we get through this particular moment in time. And as I said, executive orders is not law. And Congress has to step up and stop this. At least 2 or 3 Republicans have to decide they're not going to continue to go along with sitting on their hands and doing nothing and saying nothing and allowing the executive orders to go through the court system and be denied and stopped. So far, some courts have been able to completely block, such as birthright citizenship. And they need to unfreeze the order to unfreeze these funds that have been blocked already in a lot of these agencies. The administration has yet to unfreeze all of the funds, so it is trying to show that it's going to go up against the courts and not appreciate even that division of power in this country. This administration's intent on smashing the establishment as it doesn't work for the rich, but as it doesn't work for the corporations, but as it doesn't work for you and me, they're going to continue to shrink this government on the backs of the poor and working classes, and they're going to continue their confusion until this system decides beyond the courts to step up. Executive orders, I don't think, make it all the way to the Supreme Court. It's going to be blocked in the appeals court. But if Congress does continue down this Project 2025 and turn a lot of this into law, and given the fact that, you're talking about saving money, the Department of Government Efficiency hasn't shown proof that it's found any savings. But where does the savings go? Is it just going to be to service the national debt, which isn't going to put any extra money in my pocket? It is just going to go and pay creditors the money. We're going to pay our creditors the money that we already owe. And that's servicing the national debt. Is not going to do anything to put money back in your pocket. So all of this is happening just to game the system. 813-239-9663 is the number to call. This is Community Speaks. I'm your host, Patrick Mobili. Irene stands ready to take your telephone calls. We're going to go back to the phone lines to see what you can add to this conversation. We're going to get back to some of the stories I've mentioned, the list of federal agency and why it matters that have been under the cuts, and who are these Afrikaners, these white supremacists in suits that is in puppet number one's ears. 813-239-9663. Go ahead, Christina in St. Pete. Thank you for calling. You're on. Community Speaks.
Yeah, good morning, Mabili. So I just want to second everything your caller, Mr. Darrell, said earlier. I second everything, 100% right on. And I'm very curious as he am. I would like to see people, Republicans namely, call in who voted for Trump and speak to this. What is their reaction to this? Because it's true, not all of these people are living on an income of $500,000 a year or $100,000 a year. A lot of these people make $50,000 a year, just every day, working class Joes or on a fixed income. They're not worried about their Social Security. Do they really believe that their pensions could be protected? I mean, the grocery prices are soaring sky high. So that has always been the $1 million question for me, as far as the ethical and moral component, right, of the way these people voted. That's a conversation for another day and a very deep, long philosophical conversation about society. But if we're looking at things just from the logical perspective of what these people have to gain financially or lose, it is nonsensical. So, yes, I would love to hear their speak. I would love to hear what they have to say about this. As far as the medical scientists that have been laid off, what about cures for cancer? Biden wasn't perfect, as all of us know, but he did. That was one of his policies. He did contribute more to finding a cure. I have a friend whose mother was diagnosed with breast cancer 20 years ago, and she went into remission and lived another 25 years because at that moment in time, a piece of research had just come out that saved her from the type of cancer she was suffering from. So now, are we going to go backwards with that? Do these people that live in the villages and wherever they are, all around the state of Florida and beyond, that voted for Trump, are they not worried about their sister or their brother or their son or their mother or their cousin or their friend getting cancer now that this research has been cut? So I really want to hear from them, and I'm very curious to hear what they have to say. So I hope somebody calls in and listen. I may not agree with them, but I'd at least like to hear somebody articulate the reasoning, because it's befuddling. Have a wonderful day.
Thank
Billy,
you. Thank you, Christina. And I agree with you. And that's an important point. Articulate the reasons. And so far, we've seen at least one MAGA supporter, and that is Steve Bannon, who served in the first in 45's administration. He's a little worried. He said, cut, but don't use a meat axe, saying that, warning this administration and Musk that loads of MAGAs are on Medicaid. So he's a little worried because he recognizes that contradiction. He warned that many of the MAGA supporters rely heavily on Medicaid, which is a health subsidy for low-income U.S. citizens. And he's saying just don't take a meat axe to it. He's kind of taking that middle ground that, go ahead, cut, but don't cut too much. Don't use a meat axe. Just, I guess, use a scalpel or something. But he, like I said, he nevertheless wants to cut the program to help whack away at the $1.8 trillion deficit that the federal government is running. But, we could talk about the national debt under each president. If you look at a list over time, over historic period of which presidents presided over the most debt, you could look at the president and the time they served and what was going on. Usually those who started wars, I think George W. Bush is number 3 behind, or number 2 behind Roosevelt, which of course presided over the Great Depression and needed to build up armaments, the military-industrial complex for World War II. And I think, of course, George W. Bush ran an even higher deficit. But, of course, we saw the wars that he started, and that had to be managed after that. 813-239-9663 is the number to call here on Community Speaks. Go ahead, John from Lithia. You say what?
Everything that you're saying is right, but I want to just check your mind on this, Remember when Ukraine was first going to get in that, when Russia first was talking about attacking Ukraine, and Trump went out there and he wanted Ukraine president to go unlawfully against Biden's son. Do you remember that?
Yeah, saying that he just announced he's going to be investigated so that he can look bad.
Okay. And you know that's what spawned that war. Because we could have stopped that right at that time. Do you agree with that?
No, it was already underway. That was a revolution in 2014, and Putin wants all of those old Soviet satellite countries back. And Absolutely. So that's what he thinks is going to make Russia great again. So he was already upset that they overthrew their president in Ukraine and took Crimea back in 2014.
Yes, and we know that Trump is up for the highest bidder, right? Whoever has the most money, that's what he's going to go at. That's just him, you know what I'm saying? You think of Saudi Arabia that gave his son-in-law $2 billion. You think about, the stuff that he's trying to do now where he wants to dredge the ocean for the rare earth minerals, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. These are things that he wants to do in order to make himself look like he's, the king of everything, Mm-hmm. But where do you think China is sitting back? China's sitting back because they have a lot of, we get a lot of stuff from China.
Right. Because they're not going to lose. They're going to be the big winners.
They're going to be
anyways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that we here, the United States, I think that we're going to be diminished a lot after all this is done. That's just my saying. I don't want to see that happen, but I just think that we're going to not be the country that we was.
Yeah, you have a chance in 2 years because you need a strong Congress to be a check, and you can do that in 2 years.
We have to, but we have to jump on this right away because let's say, what if the Supreme Court gives him that power to say he's able to do whatever he wants to do? And
it's already done that.
Even now that these cases are going to them, mm-hmm. because he did say the other day that him being the president, he can do what's fit for the United States as he's done, and that's nobody can do anything against him.
That's what he thinks.
I will leave that to you. I don't want to take all your time. Thank you.
Thank you, John. That's an interesting set of questions and possibilities there. But we still have some power. We still have people power. That should be the ultimate check when you see what is actually happening. And but that promises have been broken. That you were lied to throughout the campaign. There was just an attempt to snow MAGA supporters to continue to do it. A lot of MAGA supporters have lost a lot of money following them down this Bitcoin fiasco. Their people put their life savings in, and now their life savings is gone following these guys and basically trusting them too much, not knowing that they didn't know what they were talking about. Go ahead, Mike in St. Pete. You say what?
Well, it's really good to be able to hear you on a Monday and on President's Day and to have the time to listen. I saw Nickel Boys last week. Have you seen it?
No.
What's that? Know what it's about, though, don't you? About the Dozier school.
Wasn't really clear about that, but it sounded like that had something to do with Bitcoin. Yeah.
Well, it's about the Dozier school.
Oh, Dozier school. For boys here. Nickel Boys. No, I wasn't clear.
Yeah, Nickel Boys.
Okay, no.
And it was very well done.
Film, okay.
And yes, and it's just a reminder of why so many people who are in charge these days don't want history like this to be taught anymore. Mm. They don't want people to know the way that the establishment has violated the rights of a lot of population groups and the rights of humanity and the rights of life on Earth and so on. And people need to know this. People need to know what happened during the Holocaust because the U.S. government, we all know, but we don't all know, but some of us do who decide to be just marginally informed, know that we were supplying tons of weaponry, and I'm not exaggerating, to Israel to wipe out Gaza. It's wiped out. The people that have returned there, the Palestinians, they look like the walking dead. They've got nowhere to go. They've got nothing to return to. For the President of the United States to suggest that this should be turned into a resort area is just totally revolting. It's stomach-turning. And there's so many places I look these days where I see these things happening, and I'm 67, and my heart hurts. It really does.
Yeah, it sounds like a dream of a hyper-capitalist. But, this idea of revisionist history, that's playbook 101 for,
of course, these
kinds of fascists, because they need a feel-good story, I guess, to hide the truth. And we've seen that, happen that's one of the reasons why Black history, because, we have to hide that truth from, the narrative today as they continue to try to revise history around the world. And I think this is part of the playbook.
And I'm white. There's so much about it I know I don't know. But I want to learn more, but I'm always trying to stay informed about these things. And
thank you for telling us about Nickel Boys for certain. It was a novel.
Out of the theater, yes, it was. I guess it was a Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, wasn't it? By Colson Whitehead. And,
yes, Colson Whitehead. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the movie's very well done, and it doesn't really. I thought it might kind of pull at your heartstrings more, but the way this poor kid had his life ended, and I don't want to give you the real twist of the movie if you haven't seen it or read the book, but there's a real twist to the end of the movie that's just absolutely hits you like a ton of bricks in terms of the person that he had met that they both tried to escape from the facility from, and what happened years later after the main character had been killed and the other guy had survived. It's just too much. The NRDC, and I'm just flying off the cuff here, the NRDC, the National Resources Defense Council. What kind of government goes into areas like up in Alaska and all these beautiful places where people have lived for years and they've lived off the land, and now they want to turn this upside down, just mad dash for resources and profit and everything? I'm getting sick, and I mean I'm getting physically sick, and I mean I'm getting physically sick of the whole thing because I don't know what we have to look forward to. Now, you can have as many people call in who are Trump supporters as you want. I've talked to a few this weekend, just in passing. I reminded one yesterday that approximately 49% of the people that support Trump is the same exact figure of the amount of Americans who get their news from Fox. So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
It tells you that they've been indoctrinated,
right.
They've been brainwashed. They don't have anything to say except the headlines. Obviously, a lot of them do, but a lot of them don't. They just don't know. They don't want to know.
Yeah, and that's the worst part of it, yeah.
It is. And more, everywhere I look, my heart is really hurting. And my heart's hurting for all those hungry people in Appalachia. My heart's hurting for all those hurricane victims in western North Carolina. My heart's hurting for people who believe the lies coming from their government. I guess if I really want to go to the bottom of my heart's hurting for all the Trump supporters. I don't mean the ones in the public, I mean in the government, that have attached their wagons to this ridiculous, totally devilish support, and for watching Marco Rubio up on that stage with Netanyahu, it's absolutely sickening. But to think about however many people, Palestinians, have returned to this area after our government has provided the weaponry to kill tens of thousands of them. And for us to want to make a buck off of it?
Right.
I mean...
And then tell them they have no right of return, the Palestinians.
And of course, these other governments in that part of the world, and maybe you can answer this question for me, and I'll let you go. I'm sure you have other callers, and I'm just going crazy here.
It's all right.
Do you know for certain, because it's sure going to be promulgated a lot moving forward, do we know for certain if Iran has nuclear weapons?
No, that's a good question. I don't know if we know for certain. I just think that they like, the right wing likes to flex his muscles using Iran as a backdrop. I know that they had a nuclear energy program. And so they pushed the idea from the right that is just cover for nuclear weapons program.
Exactly. Actually, Iran is I've read and heard and seen, it's a very secular country, even though the
mullahs are in control.
Yes. But, so anyway, we're just being sold a bunch of lies, and because we live in the country that's the best off in the world, we can choose to be ignorant of this. But these are fellow human beings. I don't care what country you damn live in.
Right.
These are fellow human beings, and I just, I feel guilty for feeling bad about them because I know I don't feel bad enough, and I'm not doing enough.
Right. But the American people have said they care about human rights of both sides, especially on the Palestinian and what happened on October 7th. So people want to fashion, but the 47,000 killed, and then in the end you say they don't have a right to return, and then we could rebuild this and reimagine it as a tourist trap is unconscionable. And it's not going to work. It's going to make U.S. troops, if they have to go over there and turn it into a tourist trap, it's going to make them sitting ducks. So thank you, Mike. Thank you for calling and raising those questions. 813-239-9663. Or you can write me, dj@WNF.org. I would rather read some emails from you. So don't forget, there is that option. Write us. We are just having a conversation about here on President's Day about this 1 month presidency and what the policies so far that have come down has wrought, the confusion that is wrought. But when we look at the foreign policy that is being carried out, is it making the world even more dangerous? We're seeing that the major conflict on the continent of Europe, which has been the epicenter of 2 world wars so far, what we're seeing the biggest foreign policy debacle unfold right now. The victim, Ukraine, is not even invited to the table to talk about their future. And the whole continent of Europe has been locked out as this administration here in the United States is coddling the pariah of the world, Vladimir Putin, who invaded a country just because he was mad at it. And in his mind, making Russia great again requires expansionist policies, a violent expansionist war to go and reclaim all of those countries. So we throw Ukraine under the bus. Why isn't Finland next? Why isn't Lithuania? All of these ex-Soviet republics next? In the chaos that can ensue. And as I said, China has already said that the United States seems to be backpedaling on Taiwan. So we may see China go and try to take that back. Would they be within their rights to do that? But what chaos with that wrought, and how much is all of this going to cost anyway? So far, U.S. foreign policy is embarrassing. Go ahead, Norm. You're on Community Speaks. You say what?
Well, how you doing there?
Good.
How you doing?
Pretty good.
This is, I was going to disguise myself as Simple Simon, and I was going to say I was going to be taking notes, and you're not giving me a chance so I can go on and report it to my boys. But now you didn't expose me as who I am, so deal with that. But here, you need to read an article that we just recently posted in youarewithinthenorms.com. The recent is called The Digital News Predictive Policing, Peter Thiel, and the Algorithmic Genocide, a podcast, and now it's a review, The Artificial Intelligence of the Council of Trent. Now, what this article does, it outlines one of the guys who works with this Trump administration, Peter Thiel, and it fits in the mindset of how they're doing this in terms of targeting, using computer systems and AI to target everyone, to identify everyone and their whereabouts, the cell phones being able to shut you down at any time. His methodology, if you remember, Peter Thiel was born in Germany. He moved to Cleveland. Then his people went to South Africa, actually Namibia. Okay? Namibia, grew up there. And then he went from there sometime when the Namibian people had developed their right, got their, through armed struggle, got their rights back and things changed. They moved out to California. And he was a pretty bitter kid about this. His bitterness. So what we wrote was that his bitterness from being, and when you look at this whole thing comes down to Christian nationalism, which comes out of South Africa. This whole mindset, and the other thing, he's called himself a libertarian. He is also gay. What I mean, it's made it different, but there's a whole lot of contradictions in this guy. So when you read this article, it goes into the mindset of how these people think. And he and Elon really don't get along and things like that. And so what you have in Trump and what you see in JD in our foreign policy, and I talk about this, I've mentioned to you, is the policy of Lebensraum. Progressive society needs living space. That's why, and what did he say? We are going to develop new territory. We are going to where? Go to Panama and retake the Panama Canal. We are going where? We are going to Canada. And I grew up in Detroit, and we're going to take over Canada and Greenland. And then now we're going to take over Palestine. And the interesting about that is this going to be America, or are these people, Palestinians, who just choose there, are they going to be protected by the American flag? Are they going to have the right to vote in America, or are they going to whatever? But we know that's not impossible. This policy, again, Project 2025 is identical to 1925, when the Nazis' fascination with segregation. In this, read the book of the caste. There's a section there that talks about the caste in which Hitler sends his top man Heinz Freisler over here to the United States. He comes to Austin, starts us off. They take deep notes. They're fascinated about race separation, about American segregation, and especially lynching and those sort of things. This is just methodical, and they take these ideals, and this is in the cast. You look at the book, or even you listen to what it's saying, and they take these ideas and they come back to Nuremberg. What we don't talk about is the fact that there was a lot of collaboration with these folks when the German Heinz Freisler, who comes here and studies this stuff, between the Eugenics Society. Yeah. You have politicians were eugenics. William Jennings Bryan, eugenicists. People like Oliver Wendell Holmes, eugenicists. Louis Brandeis. These people are sitting on the court. Louis Brandeis, you think of him as the first Jewish fellow on it. He was a eugenicist. A major character that we look at is Lothrop Stoddard. And you and I talked about him before, but W. Du Bois debated him. He was a major, and he was a good friend of Adolf Hitler, and he was also a good friend of a guy named Fred Trump. All these other
I got you.
No, but remember where these guys are from. These guys are all from Germany. All of them. In this country, too.
Right.
This whole thing, and Lawford started the incident because he was the head of the New York. He was from Maine, and they had direct dealings with the Brooklyn Ku Klux Klan, and took the Klan from just a southern thing to a northern way of thinking and stuff. And this is all in front of us. And we've read about, go to a thing called the Eugenics Archive.
Yeah.
And it tells you this detail. And the final, and there's another one people don't talk about. We talk about genocide. Well, the Carnegie Foundation, okay? They financed the thing to a guy named Abraham Flexner, to go in. There were 7, we talk about merit. This is the case of merit. There were at least 7 or 9 medical schools that were black in this country at one time. Flexner comes in, visits every medical school, and they close down 70 of them. And 5 of the black medical schools closed down. Abraham Flexner from the Carnegie Foundation. What's significant about that is, guess what else the Carnegie Foundation funded? The Eugenics Society and in Germany.
Yeah.
Guess who was a part of that? A guy named, I forgot his name, Von Krapp. But guess who was this Eugenics top student? Joseph Mengele.
No, Mengele. Yeah, Norm, let's go. You give me a great history lesson. I want to get one more caller in.
Well, one more call. Guess where Joseph Mengele ends up? In Brazil. And guess who's he working for? The CIA.
Yeah.
And he's involved with Pablo Escobar. We'll leave that alone, okay? And Klaus Barbie, too. So, there's a lot that we need to talk about. Let me get to the other callers at the most. Start preaching.
Yeah, out of time, almost. So, thank you, Norm. But you always raise some great historical points. And we could talk about the revisionist history. Black people we had political power after Reconstruction, and because white supremacy was so angry at the loss of their slaves and the fact that during Reconstruction, black people were running for office and winning as Republicans, mind you, and the lies had to ensue for these two parties to turn America white again. The white power structure had to rise again. So they began lying on those black elected officials during Reconstruction. And then we instituted the policy of separate but equal. And of course, the Nazis did study these policies when coming here. We're going to go and speak with Kelly, your first-time caller. Thank you for calling Community Speaks.
Thank you, my dear Sister Kelly.
Sister Kelly, hi.
Thank you. I want to congratulate Mike. I have not heard a caller express the empathy and love like he just did. He said every point that I have on my heart.
Yes.
And I think that many of our volunteers and hosts, I don't hear enough expression of empathy and love for the Palestinians. Many are quiet. And I was so touched by Mike. Mike, I hope you could give me a call. I need to talk with someone like you. 499-4796. Blessings, Mobile.
Thank you, Sister Kelly. Thank you for calling here on Community Speaks. And I think that is great that, you heard another caller that expressed your sentiments. And we should have concern, reignite our concern for human rights in this moment. Thank you so much. And that's going to be my time. Of course, up next, we're going to get back to the music. It's the Music Monday, but first we're going to get news update from The Scoop, which is locally produced news right here at WNF. So keep it tuned, WNF Tampa and WNF.org. And thank you all for calling. Thank you, Irene, for picking up the calls. And I wanted to get to more of your emails. That was a lot of provocative stuff there, but we will get back to this conversation. This is the President's Day edition here of Community Speaks. My name is Patrick Mobili, so keep it tuned right here, WNF Tampa.